Thank you
in the
very much.
Dorostachka Hall. Yeah.
I think it's going to be really good. I think it's an unreasonably difficult piece. I think it's a really substantial piece. But, I've seen you play lots of stuff now. They say musicians should never let composers see and practice. So, you'll end up with all those things in your music. So,
Well, you certainly added some new strings to my bow, which is kind of cool because I thought I was there. I thought I'd played a lot of, I've played a lot of music in my time and I've played a lot of different techniques, but you stretch my tremolo and my conception of what a tremolo can do with each new piece, which is kind of really cool. So
I think it should be fun. I think the tremolo stuff is interesting to me because I think it's attached to a very well-known legacy of guitar music that probably in some ways frustrates a lot of guitarists because either they play it too much or that it's just a lot of endurance or that it's just complicated in all sorts of different ways. But for me, I came to it really late, so it's all still reasonably new to me, even though I've written God knows how many tremolo studies at this point. I think there's loads of stuff you can do with it, and I like the desynchronizing of the left and right hands a little bit and making them do increasingly separate things, which is probably unreasonable to ask a performer to do, but it is a lot of fun nonetheless.
Well, that's been exactly the learning curve with this one really, is that doing things with the left, while the right hand is continuing this moto perpetuo idea, getting the left hand to start doing things that are either out of sync or more notes that are in sync than would normally be expected of a performer. So that's good. That's just, hope everything's smooth on the day.
Yeah, right. Something different, right? No, well, it's bit of risk, no reward. That kind of thing.
That's good. I enjoy it. Yeah,
it should be. It should be fun though. Like you don't often get to write, unreasonably difficult music. I think outside of concerti, so I think even then you've got to kind of temper what you're doing because rehearsal time is limited often. So like contemporary classical concerti for different instruments often have reasonably straightforward lines in them. There's probably like a million people cringing as I say that, but with exceptions like the Adès violin concerto or something like that are just incredibly difficult, incredibly technical pieces. I think a lot of it is often kind of like a lyrical piece, maybe like the Lark Ascending or something like that, rather than the dialogue between two instruments like it might have been with a Lutosławski piece or something like that. So yeah, it's nice fun to be able to write a really difficult technical piece that's going to be practiced and learned and properly performed and recorded. But yeah. And from the audience's point of view, I don't think it's going to sound difficult to them. I mean, they might see my fingers flying around a lot, but that's one of the nice things about this piece. And its roots, I think, are from a shared experience we've had as teenagers playing electric guitar in South Wales pub scene, really. That seems to be from some inspiration for you or some essence of that, especially in the first movement. Yeah, I think so. I think it's all like it's all that kind of rock guitar from mid-noughties South Wales. Everything is, like any good pop punk guitarist from the mid-2000s, you can't stop talking about when you were a teenager, Yeah. So all of my music is it's in some ways influenced by that. I also think that's kind of fun when you put it next to that high romantic classical guitar tremolo as well. I think it's funny to see it next to that, and I like that.
Well, I think the good thing is I don't think that you quite often, I think if people try and write a rocky thing and then play it on the classical guitar, you just lose all the power that you get from playing electric guitar kind of thing in it, and you just lose the message. But in this, you've kind of really blended them in a way that I think gives you the best of both worlds, which I think is quite an achievement. And it's really fun to play as well because it gives me a piece that gives me a way of expressing something that I don't normally get to express playing the classical guitar as well. So that's really nice from my point of view. It's kind of completely original from that point of view. It's not like, there are romantic, as you say, like Barrios and Tarrega. There's all these possible influences in there, but it feels very different for me playing it. What I'm trying to put across is quite novel. It's great. That's what you want from a new piece of music.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's something I think it is something a bit different. It's still got that connection to the core repertoire, though. That like the Villa-Lobos picking patterns of the last movement, which is something I do. It's kind of like the tremolo to me in that it's, you know, a starting point to do something weird with it, or to break patterns, or to make more extreme versions, or to iterate on it. And I think if you continually do that over and over and over and over and over again, that's where you find the depth and the originality and the novelty is when you just like drill on one thing over and over and over and over again. And you know, critics might say that I tend to write very similar pieces. I can't possibly argue that, but I think that the reason for that is, well, go on. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of when I studied with Graham Wade when I first started university, and we were talking about guitar, and really he was just saying, you know, arpeggios, guitars, the music of the guitar is really the arpeggio. And one of the greatest arpeggio pieces written is Villa-Lobos' Etude No. 1, which is what you've been inspired by in this piece. And yeah, as you say, you can just take it all over the place in different ways, chopping it up, spreading it out, and yeah, there's so many variants on pieces that you can get from this one arpeggio. It's kind of a classic in the repertoire, and
I think that's part of the fun of it as well. I think that when you focus too much on raw novelty without any kind of attempt to sort of practically apply it, you end up with, like, you know, I don't know, an effect or a thing that could be used, rather than the piece in its newly discovered context, a newly discovered idea in a newly discovered context.
Well, yeah, it remains idiomatic, which is lovely. And from my point of view as well, you're using sort of source material. My fingers naturally do that arpeggio pattern because I've played pieces, the Etude one, so many times, and other pieces that are also inspired by it. So that's a real nice gateway for the performer, and I think for the listener as well, because yeah, you're using established forms, but then they're different.
Yeah, and the tuning as well is part of that, I guess.
Yeah,
I think the tuning thing is quite funny to think about, because it was supposed to be a more standard tuning that you use for some of your arrangements, even though it's a different tuning of the instrument. But I mistuned one of the strings and then wrote the piece with the correct tuning entirely. So we have this 3-movement piece now that has a particularly peculiar tuning that's quite a lot like a more commonly used tuning, but still not a very commonly used.
I wouldn't say commonly used. It's one that I use for a couple of pieces, but well, I've written about 5 pieces in that tuning now, maybe, but still, I'd never heard of anyone using that tuning before.
Yeah, not me, I gotta be honest.
Because it was just purely used for one of my transcriptions, and but it offers something different, and with you changing another string on it, there's something even more different. And sort of going back to the rock thing, you've tabbed the music out for me at my request, because when the strings are so different than the norm, it's kind of like asking a pianist to play a piece and moving the keys so they're all in different orders, really. That's kind of what I think the equivalency is like. So by putting the music in tab and having a direct way of showing the performer where the notes are, it makes it just legible, really. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible to read.
I think it is. I think when I saw the sheet music, the actual traditional notation for this, I think it was literally illegible. There's so much repetition of the same pitch on multiple different strings in a new tuning that it is useless to read it that way. And I know I've had the biggest arguments I've had about this are with ukulele, where people are like, oh no, only sheet music, no tab. And I think for some resources, maybe like educational resources, I get it. But when things get really complicated and really difficult and really overlapping, you do just need tablature. And yeah, I don't know. I think that we kind of chicken out from that sometimes. You could write it on sheet music and have a lot more information to read it, but it would ruin the learning of the piece and it would make it a million times harder. And I don't know. I think that the only thing that is preventing people from using tab in an effective way is just pride and the prestige of using traditional sheet music, which isn't necessarily as helpful in this context.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, we've had tab was the original notation really for string instruments, or
bring it back to the
music back in the day, and then lute and vihuela, and then I guess when did it all disappear? 19th century? I don't know. Sometime when the guitar was probably trying to nudge its way into the upper echelons of elite society, and wanted, said we can read sheet music too, even though.
Oh, the one that gets on my nerves is like all this rock music that's now tabbed out and written in traditional sheet music in grades, and it's become the thing now where they're like, you should learn it that way first. It was never learned or taught that way ever. It wasn't conceived in that way ever. It's so upside down to try and teach that instrument that way. You need to learn it by ear, I think. I don't think we should try and pretend anything different. We should have a more open conception of it.
I agree. I mean, when I studied some flamenco, my teacher was wanted an oral tradition and taught me by recording the music and said, go back and listen to it and play along, and that's how we're going to transmit the ideas. I mean, we could tab it out, we could write it out, but it's the feel. Yeah, you need to get the feel. Yeah,
the feel is the thing, and I find that really, really frustrating when teaching music that you would just go by the sheet music and not listen to anything. I think it is absolutely bizarre, completely absurd to me that you would not listen to the thing that you were trying to play, if it exists. If you're interpreting something new, then you got to try and make it work together, right? But that's different.
But if it's from a tradition, then, or a style, then you got to get familiar with that style, I think, really. Yeah. In an oral way first. Yeah.
But I think this new piece, what the hell have I called it again? I forgot.
Gentle
Constancy. Christ, I'm going to have to remember that before I get on stage. Gentle. So yeah, I think with Gentle Constancy, I think I'm trying to make something that is specialist for guitarists, that is really fun and technical to play, but something that also goes beyond what I'm able to do, because the whole point of writing something for you is to write something for someone who is better at the instrument than me, right? So I need to kind of do stuff that I can't do, and I think that there's a lot of that yet. Yeah, maybe yet. It would be hopeful.
I think you probably can now from after you've written it.
Yeah, well, I reckon if I sat down for it was like the concerto I wrote a while back. It's like, could I play it? Like, well,
I think if you spend as many hours practicing this piece as I have, then I'm sure you can.
Maybe. But it's like, even if I could, I don't think I would have the same command of it anyway. I think that I don't think it's the sort of piece that is. I don't think it's the sort of piece that leans into what I'm very good at, and that's part of the responsibility of this part. Yeah, that's a responsibility that comes with writing a piece, is that you've got to make it work or support whatever that kind of person or player does. And if you don't do that, then it's bizarre, because why would you have done that? Why would you write a metal piece for Pat Metheny or something? It is a strange choice to do that. And maybe I'm sure there's some interesting creative things to be discovered there, but you could pick a million other metal players who'd play the metal piece better. It's all about doing something that supports what makes that musician sound good. And I think like that kind of technical arpeggiated stuff, quite expressive music and quite minimal music is what a lot of what you play, right? Generally, I would say, like the Philip Glass stuff definitely feels like it belongs to a perhaps more gentle version of that, and the Arvo Pärt things as well. There are a lot of, even with the tintinnabulation, there's a lot of arpeggio structures within it that emerge, right? So
I think really that's, in some ways, that's been my battle with this piece, is to be less gentle and trying to find the balance between what I feel comfortable doing, and then pushing it a bit. So we'll see on the day sort of where I dare to go with that.
No,
see how much adrenaline is in the system.
Yeah, well, that's the way to do it. I mean, I think that whatever happens is going to be good. It's
that's all nice. It's all good. I want the reason I play other people's music, really, and put myself up for being given a piece that I've no idea what it's going to be like and saying, I'm going to play this on this date in advance of the music. I like, that's been a really nice challenge to get it ready and to do something different than just go into this concert with pieces that I've played for 10 years or so and feel very comfortable with that.
Yeah, a bit of boundary pushing, a bit of challenge. Yeah, I gotta say, you don't complain. Which is shocking. I thought you were going to really push back on a lot of the piece this time, because I was like, I've given you some difficult stuff, but this piece feels like a lot, But no, you're pretty chill about it.
I've maybe sneakily changed a couple of things here and there. We'll see whether you hear them or not. but in general, it's playable. I mean, I think especially because the way the guitar was tuned for this, you had to physically play it. It's very difficult for you to perceive or conceive of the possibilities in this new tuning without getting your hands on the instrument. And I think because you've done it that way, that it's basically idiomatic. I mean, you are pushing techniques to the limits, but generally, most of those chords are playable, I think, and most of those stretches are doable.
I think that's good. I think no, bloody thing, I should have gone off Facebook. Let me just get rid of that. I think that's good. I also think one of the things that's really important when you're making a new piece is finding the middle ground and doing a bit of back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
I think we talked about that while we were writing it, but one of the assumptions I found bizarre when I first started composing was that stuff would work day one out of the box completely with no ambiguity and no questioning. And that's not how famous pieces work. It's just how people assume when they see a list piece that it is perfect and they're wrong if they question it or something like that.
Yep.
Whereas if they receive a piece from a living composer, you will just get kind of, sometimes an email very shortly after you submit it saying what about bar 53, and that collaboration is good because you want it to be good and you want it to work. But, sometimes you got to try stuff. Sometimes you do have to rehearse stuff, and sometimes you do have to work on stuff and can change and go back and forth and make it happen. But I don't understand why that is such a kind of conceptually tricky thing now. Maybe it's not, but I remember once I submitted an arrangement of a piece that didn't have my name on it, and to the same orchestra I submitted a new commission, and I submitted the arrangement first with the percussion parts formatted as were requested, and they said nothing. And then about an hour later, through my own channels, email, whatever, I submitted my own piece in the exact same format for the percussion, purposefully because they hadn't said anything. And I had an email back within about 10 minutes saying, how could you format the parts this way? And I was like, well, you had documentation requesting this, It's it is insane. When you think I'm, the famous, when you think I'm a famous composer, you don't say anything. When you think I'm some mug in his pants in his flat, you send me an email back within 15 minutes telling me, it should be a quaver in bar 89 or something. It's fair enough if they want to say it, though, I guess. Anyway, I'm probably not going to put this massive tirade about sheet music editing in the thing.